Okay. Anybody who needs the handouts from last time, please come and get them. So, one here. There are 6 of them. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I'm going to do just one more example, then you can proceed with trying the homework out. The computers are working much better, I'm told. Adam was here 2 days ago till 2 a.m. or something like that, working on that. So please ask questions, because even though this is simple, you may have some questions, okay? So, as I mentioned last time, the book is under 120-1. See, this is the path under course information. So I'm going to do one more example out of this, both in VisualLogic and Python. This one. If someone's traveling by car, you need to know 3 things: miles per gallon, distance traveled, as well as cost per gallon, to figure out the cost of the trip. So as an example, suppose somebody travels 1224 miles. Per gallon you get 18 mpg and cost is $4.20. That's of course a few years ago. How many gallons have you consumed? Distance by mpg, right? So this part of the formula is correct. And then multiply it by cost per gallon to get the total cost. Do you have any questions on this? So how many inputs are there? First of all, the program should always be general. It should not be specific to 1224 miles and so on. Okay? Should not build in this data into the program. Those are called magic numbers usually. I'm going to do it in 2 ways, VisualLogic and Python. VisualLogic, you can start here. Okay. So how many inputs do we have? 3, right? So we would need 3 of these input statements. What's the first one? Say distance. Usually it's in the same order as given in this book here. So you can call it distance. That's the name of the variable. And another input, right click, another input, right click, edit. What's the second one called? Miles per gallon. So please use descriptive words like miles per gallon. Now this is called the camel notation because the first word is all lowercase usually. Then you see a capital letter and so on. So it's explained in the book, camel notation. Makes it easier to read, doesn't it? So that's the point. And the third input before we can do the calculation is cost per gallon. So right click, edit. Now I can call it CPG, but cost per gallon is easier to understand, right? So please use descriptive identifiers. These are called identifiers, both in VisualLogic and in Python, to make your program or flowchart as clear as possible to somebody who's looking at it. Okay, now here, after we have collected 3 inputs, we need an assignment statement to do the calculation, right? I discussed that last time. So right click, edit, and then you use the same formula given here. Now normally calculations are done left to right if it's the same priority. Division and multiplication have the same priority, okay? So the expression on the right is distance divided by what was that, miles per gallon, right? Miles per gallon gives you the gas consumed multiplied by cost per gallon. Now please don't make any misspellings. Now I made a spelling error already. I don't know what I hit to wipe it out. So distance. Spelling should be exactly the same. Distance divided by miles per gallon. Multiplied by cost per gallon. Now this is a mistake. This a variable supposed to go in here, right? And there's a spelling error here. I don't know where all that is coming from. So edit, distance by miles per gallon, cost per gallon, okay. Distance repeated twice, so delete that. Delete all this. Multiplied by cost per gallon. Okay, and what we have is the result, cost of the trip. Now cost per gallon is different from cost, right? Any questions on that? 2 separate variables. Now check this out carefully. I could have another error in there. So distance divided by miles per gallon. Distance is spelled correctly. Otherwise, it assumes it's 0 or gives you an error at execution time, runtime. Cost per gallon twice, that's not good. So edit it one more time. Something's wrong around this point. Okay, delete all this. My typing skills are obviously not very good. Now what else do we need? Print out the result, right? We don't have any output of this program. If we run it, we can try running it. Distance 24 miles. Was it 18 for the miles per gallon? And cost per gallon was 420. So but there's no output because we forgot to put a print statement in here. So output statement, see this shape of the box tells you the type of box it is. Input boxes are slanted this way to the left and output boxes are to the right. Now what do we want to output? Cost of the trip. So it's better to put a message before it, cost of the trip equals dollar something, right? That's the message. And along with that, we need the cost. So this is part of that VisualLogic documentation. Don't use a comma there. Now let's run it from the beginning. So click on that and run. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4? You can use the same test data given in the book. Miles per gallon, was it 18, I believe? Cost per gallon was $4.20. It can be entered as 4.2. So that's approximately the cost of the trip. 290. Now I may have entered some data incorrectly. Should match exactly, right? And do you recall what I entered incorrectly? Well, we'll find out soon. The input boxes have vanished, so that's why I mentioned that put these in console mode, not dialog box, so you can see what the errors were. So this little box appears here at the top. Right click, console mode, left click, okay. Right click, edit, more, console mode, and for the output too. Okay. We are at this box, so we just ended the program. So we've got to click at the top and run again. $12.24 is the correct thing, but I may have entered something incorrectly. I don't know what. Miles per gallon. Now, VisualLogic does not distinguish between capital letters and lowercase letters. So that's why it's showing you all caps here. But Python does, so you have to be careful. Okay? Was it 18? And cost per gallon was 4.20. So this better, this correct, right? You can see, match it with this. Now, any flowchart or program, I'm going to ask you to run usually two or more times, okay? To verify that it's correct. Because it should not contain any built-in numbers. I'm stressing that because I've seen that many times in the past. People put in 1224 here. Distance equals 1224. Now that's an assignment statement. That means the program works only for that case. Do you have any questions on this? Any questions at all? Okay. Now using the snipping tool under accessories, you cut and paste. Yes. What's the question? You had no question. Okay. Cut and paste both of these into Paint and print it out. I want printouts only because I can understand it better, I can write on it, etc. I don't know if I've forgotten anything, but let's run it just one more time to see if it's a general program. All programs should be very general. It should not depend on built-in data, okay? So does this depend on any of the numbers? It does not, okay? So let's begin, run it one more time. Value for distance. Let's say we've gone 2,000 miles at 20 miles per gallon. So that means 100 gallons, right? And cost per gallon is $3. So that's $300. Okay, so it seems to be working okay. No more questions? Okay. Now let's translate this exactly into Python, okay? Including the two runs. We're going to match them with Python's output, make sure it's correct. So I keep the flowchart handy so I can go to Python. And I showed you how to download the correct version. Don't use 2.7 or anything below 3.0. Go to idle. But you got to start a new file for the program, new window. And that should match this flowchart precisely. And you should write a few comments at the top. Programmer, etc. I told you. My name, the purpose of the program. And you can expand this. Cost of trip given the following information. And I'm not going to write all that down, but given miles traveled, etc. Sort of matching the description in the book. Matching this description. Given these three numbers, you're calculating cost. Okay. So the first useful command to Python is distance equals. Now, can we assume that it's a whole number? You could assume that for this simple case. I'm going to assume that for this example because I got to show you both ways of doing it. Convert to integer, but first read from the keyboard miles traveled. Very simply, you can always put in a print after that to verify that it's done it correctly. Okay. Now I'll show you one more thing. I'm going to write very simple programs in the beginning just to make sure there's no confusion or problem. So let's run this. Because without a print, we wouldn't know what happened. So run it. Let's save it on the Z drive as usual for, you have to give it a name, sample1 or something. No, I'll call it 1A. I don't know what sample1 is. Okay, so it's at this statement, miles traveled. I forgot to put a colon here to separate the input from the output. But let's say we put in 2000. It's going to print 2000, right? In Python, a variable can have different types of information at different times. For example, let me just remove int from here to show you it can be a string. And to verify that, print out type of the variable distance, comma. So the syntax is different from VisualLogic. There we used an ampersand. Here we use a comma. So this says, please print out the type of distance, whether it's an integer or string or float, or that is a real number. So I'll save it on the same file name, miles traveled 2000 or whatever, 320, it doesn't matter. So it's telling you that it's a string, right? str. And the string actually, all strings inside the program are in double quotes. So I'm going to write it like that if it's a string. Okay? Now, it's your choice. Let's convert it to you can do it in two steps. You can say, this is not a good way of doing it, but you can say this if you like. Distance equals integer of distance. Why isn't this good? Because it's confusing, right? Distance used to be a string, now it's an integer at this point. Just for verification, let's print it out. Copy this, Control C, Control V, paste, and run it. Okay, 320. And I told you there's a bug in Python. It repeats some information sometimes, so I have to go over it. Okay, backspace over it. So it used to be a string, and now it's an integer. But it appears exactly the same, right? So you can't tell by looking at it whether it's a string or a number, if it's all digits. Therefore, now of course, if I run it with a decimal point in it, it fails. Okay? Suppose I put 320.5, then it doesn't run properly. It works up to this point because a string can be anything, any sequence of letters. Okay? And then it says basically that you're trying to convert that string to an integer and cannot be done. You can't take care of the 0.5 basically. Okay? So suppose we wanted to generalize the program further. We'll make it a float. Okay? And then it should take in, and we'll remove this. We don't need this anymore. What does this say? Read the string, convert it to a real number, including decimal points, put it in distance, print the type of distance, and print the value of distance. Any questions on that? Okay, run. I typed 320.5, it took in 0.5 from somewhere else. So this is correct, right? Any questions on that? Now let's complete the program because this is not complete, right? We need to input miles per gallon, cost per gallon, etc. And just to speed up the process, I'm going to say MPG. Not a good idea, but you can do so. Float of. Normally it should match exactly what you see on the flowchart. Okay? And lastly, cost per gallon. Input is a built-in function, it's called. Enter cost of gasoline per gallon. Okay. Just to make it exactly the same, I'm going to expand this. And this also. Because I usually don't use long identifiers when typing in a program. I make too many mistakes. Okay, so please remember I've converted each of these to float. Okay, so they can all be real numbers. Can I do calculations on those now? Yes, okay, as long as those are numbers, I can put in a statement just like this one. Cost equals divided by miles per gallon times cost per gallon. And I'm purposely going to make a mistake here. I'll make C capital, okay? Is it important to write dollar in front of this? Yes, because I wouldn't know otherwise whether cost is in cents or dollars or something else. And then the cost. Okay. Okay. Miles traveled, was it 12, 24, and 18, and cost 4.2. Okay, I got an error because capital C, cost per gallon, is not defined, right? Is that correct? So I got to spell it correctly. Now it should run without any trouble. Miles traveled 1224. I don't know where the C is coming from. 18 miles per gallon can be entered 18.0 or 18, either way. Cost per gallon 4.2, 4.20, either one. So this matches the answer in the book, doesn't it? 285.6. Now we'll worry about formatting later. To print out the 0 is not that easy, but if you're curious, I'll show you where to go in a minute. But do you have any questions on this example? Now, obviously, there is an extra print statement which should be removed, right? We don't want that. It doesn't match the output I give you. And then you can obviously run it a few times, make sure it works for many, many cases. And it would be nice if you put a colon here, just like I put here, gallons, right? So if I mark something, it copies that, unfortunately, in what I type. So I've got to be aware of that. So let's say we go 2,000 miles. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, at 20 miles per gallon, that's 100 gallons, and cost is $3. So that's $300, okay? Any questions? Now, when I want the printout, I want the program listing, just like in handout 1, okay? You can label it program listing or program in Python 3 point, whatever version it is, this one. Program in Python 3.3.0. Then cut and paste, run 1, type in run 1, and that's the first run. Type in run 2, and that's the second run. Okay? And it should be as close as possible to the thing given on the handout. Okay? And for homework 1, make sure you do the pool problem first, completely, both in VisualLogic and Python, then do the other one. That's a bit harder. Any questions? I'm going to stop here, let you play with it, and try the homework, at least do the pool problem. Okay. Oh, formatting, yeah. One thing very briefly, I can't save the flowchart, by the way. If you need to know how to format the output, it's on the Y drive. Code samples. I think it's called format here. Okay? It's complicated, but floating point numbers require a format like this in curly brackets. 2 places after decimal point, 0 places before the number. So it's free format basically. And then decimal point, 2 places after decimal point, floating point number. Okay, so this example is for a floating point number, right? And if it's an integer, this says print it in 2 decimal places. Okay, so look at that example if you're interested. Any questions? Yes.
Where's the book?
The book is free and it's on the Y-Drive under course information, right here. Okay? Yes?
Is there a way to see the homework online?
Yes.
On Moodle, I can't get it to show anything.
Okay, I'll come back to Moodle in a minute. I may have forgotten to cut and paste it on that. Okay?
Also, are we still on homework 1 or are we moving to homework 2?
Still on homework 1 because it's not due till the 30th, 29th.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So it's due after long time. Now, I sometimes forget to put it on Moodle, but I always give a printout in class. Okay? So I'll check it out. But any other questions? Okay. So please experiment with all this and let me see if and cut and paste it onto Moodle.